My greetings to you, dear viewer. Welcome to another video where I analyze Rimworld from a lore point of view. Today we'll be talking about another xenotype, the Wasters. If you have missed the previous videos on the subject of xenotypes or xenohumans, I will recommend for you to check them out later. But as a short recap, xenohumans are essentially genetically modified versions of baseliners, the equivalent of a default and unmodified human in the Rimworld universe. If you remember my first video on the subject, I mentioned that the only big difference between ourselves and the baseliners in Rimworld is that in the Rimworld universe, humanity has evolved to be more resistant to radiation in general, but for today's xenohumans, resistance to radiation barely represents the tip of the iceberg. Wasters are a type of xenohumans which, as the name implies, live mainly within toxic wastelands. Originally engineered to repopulate worlds that have gone through an apocalyptic scenario caused either by a radioactive disaster or immeasurable pollution, Wasters are not only adapted, but thrive within post-apocalyptic scenarios. Wasters are resistant to radiation and toxicity. Their lungs are capable of filtering out with 100% efficiency any type of poison or toxicity from the environment, meaning that they can breathe through pollution or poisonous fumes just as easily as you will breathe fresh mountain air in a field of flowers. That is, unless you have a pollen allergy like I do. Then a field of flowers might be just as bad as a toxic wasteland to you. With that being said, despite their lungs granting them immunity to environmental poison, they are still susceptible to venom introduced directly into their bloodstream, like the one found within venomous talons or other similar type of weaponry. Speaking of poison, while being immune to toxicity allows Wasters to survive, their pollution stimulus allows them to truly thrive. Remember how I mentioned that their lungs filter out toxicity? They don't do just that. While toxicity is filtered out, some chemicals are retained and used to create a chemical-induced rush, which improves Wasters both mentally and physically, allowing them to move faster and think better. A similar gene is found also within combat-engineered mega insects, but those I will be talking about in another video. Now, it will be perfect if Wasters stopped at that, but unfortunately their bodies also come with a few downsides, one of them being a permanent addiction to psychit. In the same way that Hussars need go juice in order to survive, Wasters require psychit, which is a more natural alternative found and extracted from within psychit plants, which is rather contradictory to a Waster lifestyle, as living within pollution wouldn't allow much room for plant growth, meaning that they must procure it either by growing it in an isolated, clean environment, for example within a bunker by using unpolluted soil or hydroponic basins and a solar lamp to prevent exposure to the toxic environment of the outside world they will most likely be living in. Other ways through which they could obtain their psychit could be either through trading or more likely by raiding, which is something we are going to talk more about later. In terms of drugs, Wasters are impervious to wake-up addiction, meaning that they can ingest it freely without getting addicted to it. Wake Up is a synthetic stimulant which, as the name suggests, allows its user to remain awake for longer periods of time, eliminating any immediate requirement for sleep. Wake Up is, as you can imagine, rather risky. It has a decent addictiveness factor to it and a small overdose risk, even if taken only once. In theory, while the chances are rather small, even your first dose of Wake Up could be your last. In many large companies or competitive universities, people who usually achieve high positions or great results are called wake-ups, as they often are associated with this type of drug, in a similar fashion how nowadays some people take Adderall to study more efficiently, despite it being a medicinal treatment for ADHD, as it can decrease the need for sleep and increase focus. Wake Up is essentially that, but times 10, if you will. If we were to break down the composition of Wake Up to more efficiently compare it to nowadays drugs, we could assume that Wake Up will be composed of strong stimulants such as amphetamines, cognitive enhancers to maintain both memory and cognitive functions during the period of extended consciousness, mood stabilizers to prevent anxiety from the lack of sleep, and most importantly, neuroprotective agents such as some sort of antagonist to melatonin and antioxidants in order to somehow protect the brain from the lack of sleep. So in theory, Wake Up will be truly a strong chemical cocktail, which within Rimworld will be obtained mainly from neotramin, a chemical which is at the base for most drugs and chemicals found within its world. So we could say that wasters being immune to the risk of a wake-up addiction and a possible overdose is a pretty big deal. Now that we have broken down the internal biology of a waster, it's time to talk about their exterior. What do they look like? How do they act in a societal role? Well, first of all, aesthetically speaking, wasters are the opposite of what the general public will consider attractive, which is to be expected. A waster's hair is always grey in color, while their face is sharply angular, with prominent cheekbones and deep-set eyes that give them a hollow, almost skeletal look. The skin, which is slate grey in color, rough and coarse to the touch, appears tightly stretched over their bones, accentuating the sunken cheeks and giving their face a pinched appearance. Like Itaki or Neanderthals, wasters bear germline genes, meaning that they can reproduce and give birth to other wasters without any problem. From a societal point of view, it's important to keep in mind that wasters were created with the sole intent of inhabiting post-apocalyptic planets, meaning that they were made for a rough, unforgiving life and environment. Meaning that wasters are not the type to blend easily within a normal society. Their personality tends to be aggressive. That, coupled with their looks, tends to create an environment where they are ostracized by others. So it's not a surprise that wasters living on Rimworlds tend to take the role of pirates and raiders, attacking other colonies for resources and psyche while usually having little to no fear of retaliation, as the toxic environments they live in prove to be a perfect natural defense against other attackers, allowing them to live as reclusive isolationists within nuclear wastelands. As Itaki are found more generally on cold planets, Neanderthals are found on wild planets, and dirt moles are found either underground or clumped together like sardines within small and tight spaceships. Wasters are most probably found by large numbers on Tox worlds, planets that have been roughly ravaged by nuclear disasters or chemical warfare. I would like to thank you all for watching this video until the very end. We are now closing 1000 subscribers, which is going to be a great milestone for me to reach. If you want to support this channel, please like this video and subscribe while leaving a comment telling me what you enjoyed or disliked about this video so that I can continue to improve and adapt within future videos. Thank you for watching and good night.